Welcome to Gallery News and Reviews. This is a weekly program about the displays in the Halifax area at the different galleries. I'm Leighton Davis, and I'm at St. Mary's University Art Gallery. Currently at St. Mary's we have a display called I Belong to Guinea, which is in Pidgin means Faces of New Guinea. This is a collection of artifacts owned by Barry Stewart, who was in Papua New Guinea for 3 years as an advisor to the government there. He was recently at the Dal School on the faculty at the law school at Dalhousie. He now is chief magistrate in the Yukon territories. This exhibit was a cooperative effort between the anthropology department at St. Mary's and the art gallery. Pauline Cusack is in charge of the collection in Halifax, and she's been a big help to me, helping write the catalog and also helping hang the exhibition. She has recently talked with David Counts, who is a professor of anthropology and chairman of the department at McMaster University, and he has done a fair amount of work since 1966 in Papua New Guinea. And I'd like to turn now to that interview.
Good morning, David. Welcome to Halifax. You're here at St. Mary's Art Gallery for the opening of I Belong to Guinea, which is an artifact show of pieces from Papua New Guinea. And I understand that you're very familiar with the island. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the geography and the history, just to introduce us.
Thank you very much for your welcome. I've been doing research in New Guinea for about 14 years now. But I think one is never familiar with Papua New Guinea. Okay, it's too varied, it's too big. New Guinea is the largest island, save Greenland, in the world. It's occupied by an enormously wide range of people, 700 different languages. It's languages that they would have to learn, not dialects. And so it's very hard to generalize about New Guinea, but the material here is a good representation of the kind of things that New Guineans do. Yeah.
That's interesting. Maybe we could talk about the different artifacts in terms of the way they're set up here. I understand that these pieces are yam masks. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about the role of the yam in the culture and maybe in the diet. Very beautiful.
Well, yes, they are. To call them yam masks, I think perhaps demonstrates that the yam is more than just food, though. I mean, a people in New Guinea, people will focus on a particular kind of food as sort of the center of not only their diet, but the center of their thinking about food. In many areas it's taro, in many others it's yams, and particularly in areas where yam is the staple. Yams are grown more for the soul, or as much for the soul, as they are for the body. And when the yam harvest comes, then a mask is constructed, and the yam, which are sometimes giant yams, so large, 2 men to carry it, will be masked and presented to the village as a kind of a statement of their success, because it takes not only good soil and good hard work, but it takes magic, and it takes a certain amount of love and care to produce them, because again, they're food for the soul as well as food for the body.
You mentioned magic. Does magic play an integral part in Papua New Guinean belief?
That's one generalization that one could make about Papua New Guinea. Yeah, magic, sorcery is almost universal in Papua New Guinean cultures, both positive and negative. For good magic for producing things and protecting your property, and in most societies, sorcery is practiced in an effort to control those whom you're not very friendly with.
It's still alive and well. Presently, is it something that people are growing out of?
There are laws forbidding the practice of it, that is criminal laws forbidding the practice of it, even some made by people who don't believe that it's real, but who realize that to threaten someone with sorcery might be a way to damage them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a serious enough problem that there have to be laws to control it. Yeah.
Really?
And I have known sorcerers who claim to have killed a number of persons. Whether they really did or whether they simply set those people up to think that they were being killed by sorcery and the person's probably died. I don't know, but a thoroughly nasty person. They don't predominate, but they're there.
Uh-huh. Okay. David, have you ever had a supernatural experience or any personal experience with a sorcerer?
No, sorcery is unseen. I did participate in an interview with a ghost once.
Would you like to tell us about that?
Well, very briefly, because there's some things here that we ought to take a look at. But briefly, it was a 12-year-old child who was killed, and the people in the village believed that he was killed by sorcery, and in order to identify the sorcerer, they interviewed his ghost to establish the guilt of the alleged sorcerer. And I participated in a ceremony in which the power of the ghost can hold a bamboo pole. And whatever really was going on is beyond my capacity to explain, except that I know that when I was trying to make the pole move, I was trying very hard to make it move, and it was immobile. And the explanation for that, given by those people, was the power of the ghost that could hold it against our power in order to answer a question, yes. That was put to it about who killed you. I know of no physical thing that could have been made to hold that pole still. So one explanation, as far as I'm concerned, is as good as any other, and it might as well have been.
Okay. Well, maybe we should start looking at the pieces. The two standing figures down against the wall, where would they be found in Papua New Guinea?
Most villages or hamlets in Papua New Guinea cluster around a ceremonial house, often constructed differently from other houses, and often much larger. Sometimes it's where men sleep and women and children sleep in domestic houses. Sometimes it's merely where spirits reside. Often it's called a house tambaran in Pidgin, a house of the spirits, to translate it. And carved or sculptured and painted figures are very common in such men's ceremonial houses as tutelary spirits, ancestral spirits overseeing what goes on inside. The form and decoration of such spirits would be quite variable from place to place, but their presence is very large.
Okay, so the ancestors go and live in the carving and in the house? Or?
Yeah. Whether they actually believe the spirits of the ancestors inhere there, or whether it's simply a mnemonic, a reminder of the presence abroad of ancestral and tutelary spirits, is a question that would vary from place to place. I mean, the answer to that would vary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe we could look at the pieces against this wall. Mm-hmm. I noticed that the top three pieces are called suspension hooks. Mm-hmm. Now, what would they be used for?
Well, now, these are fairly widespread, and at a guess, these are good and representative of the sort. They're representative of two curiosities about Papua New Guinea. One is those are almost certainly purely utilitarian, in the sense that they are designed and used to suspend things, probably in a men's house. It might be a pig net, it might be fish nets if you're in a coastal community, it might be bags of food, or anything, and they're there to suspend it to keep it out of the area of traffic, because they don't have cupboards, and to protect it from rats, which are plentiful and seem to eat food and to chew nets and things. But in large parts of Papua New Guinea, even purely utilitarian things are also embellished, carved, decorated, painted, and made into something that captures an aesthetic sense. Those would be a good example of that kind of thing. The adze that's here, it's a stone adze, and I think perhaps there'll be a chance to see it later, is another example of that kind of thing. The purpose of that adze is almost certainly to make a canoe or to shape a shield, such as the ones down there. But it's not a simple tool in the sense that we go into a warehouse, into a hardware store and buy a hammer and it says, you know, the brand name on the thing, and that's all the embellishment it has. A tool in Papua New Guinea is often a piece of art as well. There's almost a drive to embellish, to make things beautiful, balanced. It may be that that increases their efficacy, okay, that by making them beautiful, by putting one's own power and love into them, some of that power and love of the Creator inheres in the thing itself, and therefore it works better. But be that as it may, it is characteristic that utilitarian devices are artistic devices at one and the same time.
You notice that also in the lime gourd, which has a very functional use. Maybe you could briefly tell us why one would have a lime gourd in the house, and also the point of that goes with it.
Well, when I first went to New Guinea, I recognized that most expatriates, outsiders coming into New Guinea, particularly since much of their contact with the Australians, were beer drinkers. Australians were beer drinkers. And so betel chewing, which is what the lime gourd and the spatula are associated with, was described to me in Pidgin as beer belong nipala. Now, a translation of that would be our beer, as over against the kind of beer that we use in the bottles, and it's associated with chewing the fruit of the areca palm or betel palm, and the leaves or the peppers of the betel pepper, and the lime is put there probably to cut the acid and to release the alkaloid, and it's an upper, it's a stimulant that's chewed by almost everybody, off and on, simply to maintain alertness, and people can chew betel nut and dance all night from dawn to dusk, and most dance ceremonies start at dusk and go right through to the following dawn. And if you're wearing a heavy mask piece with its associated costume, it's an enormous amount of energy. And so people will chew betel as they're doing that through the night or out drumming and singing, and then the next day, of course, they'll collapse and sleep for about 14 hours.
You just pointed to these masks. Are these Banks masks or
those are almost certainly the central feature of an ancestral figure who would perform to supervise initiations or marriages or funerals or such. The rest of that costume would probably include an enormous spray of feathers, including bird of paradise feathers and cockatoo feathers and great plumes, so that the creature might be 9 feet tall, with the wearer looking out through roughly the mouth parts of the masked face, and the costume then covering the human body going all the way to the ground. They're very elegant, very graceful, and they would go usually in pairs, sometimes 2 females, sometimes 2 males, sometimes a male and a female, in a very graceful sway and rhythm around the event that's taking place. Again, impressing the people with the presence of tutelary or ancestral spirits to supervise.
So both men and women will participate in the festival?
No. Spirits
Oh, the
may
spirits
represent female beings, but the users, makers, wearers, and many times the observers would be men only. Women are very much kept out of ceremonial life, except for very unusual women. There is a gulf between male and female in much of Papua New Guinea.
David, do both men and women participate in the festivals?
Oh, no. At least not in the performance. That is, the masks that we're talking about would be performed by men, made by men, and in many instances only seen by men in the performance. Women might be sent out of the village, completely away from them, and have nothing to do with the performance of some of these masks, although the mask itself would be regarded as a female thing, female creature.
Are women treated differently than men in Papua New Guinean society?
Oh, yeah. And one of the very characteristic things about perhaps oceanic societies in general, and certainly in Melanesia and Papua New Guinea in particular, in traditional society, at any rate, not in the cities, but elsewhere, would be a real gulf separating males from females, almost as if they were different kinds of animals who had to do with each other only with a certain amount of danger. Women are often seen as much more natural than men. Men are cultural, at least that's one way of interpreting it. Men deal with spirits, women deal with reproduction. So in that sense, they're very different kinds of beings. But furthermore, women, because they're in touch with nature and because they are capable of producing also, it's very dangerous. They pollute men. Sexuality itself is polluting and dangerous to men, and women are very threatening to men in some cases, although they are powerless in the political system in much of the traditional time. So it's a very ambivalent kind of situation, but it pervades their thinking and it pervades traditional art in ways that I not always evident around us.
I've noticed in many of the pieces in the collection that sex is denoted by the genitalia. Maybe you could comment on that for us.
And again, it's extremely important whether this is a masculine or a male figure or a female figure. And it might very well have different uses, but certainly it suggests a pervasive kind of dual sexuality that's very much more emphasized than ours. I have a friend who's done research in New Guinea, and he was told to keep his chair inside his house rather than on the veranda for fear that some woman might sit in his chair and therefore endanger him.
Is discrimination openly practiced?
Well, now,
I suppose it would be different
discrimination in its real sense of to discriminate between two things, yeah, very much. Discrimination in terms of the new society of Papua New Guinea, no. There are women who are participating in the government, and certainly as people are educated, many of these attitudes are left behind. But as one moves in, as it were, to the bush, one finds very much the feeling that women are less powerful than men. They have fewer rights in things. They do not control either political or religious life. Many young women in Papua New Guinea are struggling with this problem, and with the help of the new government of independent Papua New Guinea, there's enormous strides being made. But they don't reflect much that goes on in older traditional people out in the villages, where perhaps the government's impress only arrives every 6 months or something for the visit of a constable. But there are beautiful tapes in Pidgin by a young Towai women's group from East New Britain, a song called International Women's Day. I think this is International Women's Week, isn't it?
I'm not sure. I should. But maybe we can move on to future. I noticed that there's a lot of bird symbolism. A number of the pieces have either birds posed on someone's head, or in this particular piece, a bird, I think it's a hornbill, is holding a man or a woman by the arm. Now, does the bird symbol figure in the folklore at all? Or perhaps you could tell us a little bit about that.
Extremely important. I don't believe that there is a single geographic region on the face of the earth that has a more vivid and more extensive bird life. After all, this is the home of the hornbill, the golden cockatoo, the numerous parakeets and parrots, and the bird of paradise. And the bird of paradise is located only in the Guinea. And so birds are just everywhere all of the time. And perhaps in consequence of that, birds play a very large role in mythology, in the cosmology, the spirit world. There's a bird in the area that in which I have done my research called Vilno, and Vilno literally is a spirit person. It is spirit persons who exist out there, when they want to interact with human beings, turn themselves into Vilno. And so when one is walking through the forest and sees this, which looks almost like a red-winged blackbird there, one knows immediately
that a spirit is
dealing with a spirit person, and that spirit being is trying to give you a message. So they're very, very, they're omnipresent and very much engaged in relating human beings to the spirits that dwell around them. And spirits dwell around people. To call them spirits is probably putting a bad face on it, too. To call them spirits suggests that they're insubstantial, that they're somehow outside the natural universe. from the perspective of most traditional Papua New Guineans, they were not outside the natural world.
They form part of it.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah. And you might very well, walking down a forest path, interact with one.
And that would not be surprising.
Well, it might be very disturbing,
Disturbing,
but it wouldn't be surprising in the sense of something that you wouldn't expect to happen. Okay, it might very well happen to you.
I've noticed that there's a bull roar included, it's marked in the catalog. Maybe you could tell us what a bull roar is.
Well, technically, purely and simply, it's simply a piece of wood that's shaped generally like so, and is very thin, and has a twist in it, like a propeller. Such that if you tie a string to it and tie the end of the string to a pole and you swing it around, it makes a roaring noise. Now, that noise is conceived by very many people to represent the voice of ancestral spirits. But to pick up on our notion of male-female separation, there's a very widespread myth that women, a woman, specifically out breaking firewood, had a chip break off and sail off into the bush. And she said, that's a really interesting noise. And so she went and tied a string to it and was swinging it around, making the noise when a group of men came by, and they said, this woman has discovered something that will put us in touch with the ancestors. So they kill her, and they take the bull roar, and they thereafter make it secret from women as the voice of the ancestors. So again, you get this ambivalence between women as creators and men as users. And it's an extremely widespread myth about the origin of the bull roar in the Pacific. But it's a sacred thing that would be kept hidden from the eyes of women inside the ceremonial house, taken out into the deep bush to be performed where no woman would see it. And most informants would probably say that had a woman stumbled across a group of men using it, they would have had no recourse but to kill it, because she didn't know that.
It's interesting because they do give women credit for discovering it.
Oh, the women are obviously
creators.
productive children, and women are fecund in the truest sense of the thing, not only with regard to human beings, but with regard to produce gardens, with regard to cultural items. But they are not regarded as having the right often to control those things.
David, I'm interested to know if artifacts such as these would be sold commercially in Papua New Guinea, or...
Well, a lot of these would be available for purchase. Now, I presume that Barry did in fact purchase some of them, or that some of them were purchased, and others, I understand, were gifts. Oftentimes, I think people are led to put this down as, well, then it's just produced for the tourist market. That's a misconception, because things which are produced and sold or produced for sale, whether they are sold to tourists or to other New Guineans, are right in the heart of a long-standing tradition in Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea and the Melanesian Islands are world famous for the traditional trading rings that connected huge areas by sailing trade in outrigger canoes, by long-term overland trade in what we would consider to be art, and what many of them would consider to be art. There were groups of people who composed songs which they traded for things like masks and things of that nature, so that very many of these would have been produced and sold commercially, but that's commercially not in the sense of
manufactured
or manufactured for a tourist market, but it may be that they would have been obtained hundreds of miles from their place of manufacture because of the system of trade which has sort of commercial overtones to it. Many of the societies use a kind of shell money.
Yes, I noticed there are many necklaces in one of the cases over here, and the necklaces are made of cowrie shells. Now, I understand the cowrie shells at one time were a form of money.
Yeah, there are a number of shell kinds that were used in different parts of Papua New Guinea for special purpose monies, and some of them for real, almost monies that could have an exchange rate. The ones over here appear to be Spondylus and Cowrie, and they probably are from a coastal group, but they may have been traded well inland and would very much represent, a kind of commercial exchange that people would engage in. So they would also probably be used for marriage gifts from the groom's family to the bride's family, what's sometimes called bride price, but large gifts of wealth items. It could be shells, it could be pigs. In fact, there's often a triangle of pigs, pearl shells, and women. It's the title of a very well-known book about exchange systems. Those three things being interchangeable: shells, women, and pigs. We better not look into that.
No, I don't think so. Maybe you could tell us about this large ceremonial canoe that's hanging in the wall back here. It looks very interesting.
Well,
maybe you
of
could
course,
tell
it's
us.
not a canoe in which one to go to sea, because it's a ceremonial canoe in which the term. The curious thing about it, as I think you'll note, is that it has the form of a crocodile. And I suspect, although I gather this is from the Papuan Gulf, and the myth that I know is from several hundred miles away, but I would guess that this is related to a mythological canoe, a canoe manned by ghosts. There is a myth that ghosts use a crocodile for their canoe, and that if a normal human being interacting with them is careful, that is to say careful in that he doesn't call attention to the fact that this is a canoe, and doesn't call attention to the fact that the fishing party are ghosts, he can join them and go fishing with them and then be given the fishing catch that they have at the end. But that a person who is not cool, who says, I'm not going to get in that, that's a crocodile and not a canoe, or who says, you people are all dead, what are you doing here, calls up the worst characteristics of the crocodile and the ghosts, and therefore is himself consumed rather than consuming the catch. And you'll note that this is human being and not a crocodile. But my suspicion is that it's associated with the myth of a person who was not smart enough to realize that you have to treat things which are out there with respect, because if you name them, you call up the characteristics of the thing you name. So if one saw a crocodile in the bush, one wouldn't want to call it a crocodile either. One would just want to get away and not call it anything at all.
Well, David, I want to thank you very much for coming here today and talking with us and for coming to Halifax for the opening. We really appreciate your time and effort, and I'm sure everyone will be very interested in everything you've had to say today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline and David. That show continues until March the 30th. Elsewhere at the other galleries in Halifax, we have, at the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia, our paintings by Ron Bolt through April 7th. In the second floor gallery, and work by Tony Urquhart, a retrospective exhibit in the main gallery through April the 14th. Artisania Latin America will be on view at the Art Gallery at Mount St. Vincent University March 13th to 16th. The Center for Art Tapes will feature art of Douglas Waterman March 19th through 29th. At the Eye Level Gallery, paintings and drawings by Judith Mann and photography and writing by Gary Gibbons will be exhibited through March 29th. Photography by Elizabeth Guildford, a group print show at the Aunt Leon Owens Gallery next week. The Art Gallery at Dalhousie continues its show called Woven Images, 19th and 20th Century Bolivian Weavings through March. That exhibition will be the focus of the gallery news and reviews next week, where we will be interviewing Myrna O'Brien about the show. We'd like to invite your comments about the programs. If you'd like to write to Gallery News and Reviews, care of Dalhousie University Art Gallery, Dalhousie University, Halifax, Nova Scotia, or call 424-2403. Thank you for watching.